Hi and welcome back to another video of JPlay. I am Marcus, and as you can see today I'm starting my playthrough of War of the Ring, the card game. And because you know my channel, I definitely decided to add the Against the Shadow expansion to that. So yes, I'm doing a full solo game of this game. Quite honestly, I only played, I think, 1.5 to 2 sessions of this game, basically as training exercises and only using the solo mode. So I've never played the normal mode, basically 4-player game or so. For whatever reason, when it first came out, I wasn't really that much excited when I have seen the first video about this. For me, it really felt like it's a 4-player game with some variants, how you can then play it with 3 or maybe 2 players. But after I got this at Essen, basically both the base game and the expansion, I was really eager giving it a try, the solo mode. And yeah, I really quite liked it, and that's why I'm doing this today. There is one thing though, because I'm really not a master in this game, I definitely decided to go with a short scenario, which is basically the Fellowship of the Ring. So it's me, Gandalf, as the Free Peoples against the Balrog of Moria. So we are playing the first book of the trilogy, so which it says here, From the Shires to the Shores of the Anduin. With this special mode, you are removing quite a few of cards. I think we're basically halving the decks as far as I could tell. And we're also staging the battlegrounds. Normally these are kind of randomly. We are removing some of the pairs. We are not using any ring tokens. And ultimately it should be much quicker to record, to play, and to edit for me. And then depending on how things go, I really might consider doing a full playthrough of the trilogy game, that is. Before I get started, huge shout out to all of my patrons and channel members. You guys are truly amazing. Can't really tell how much I appreciate your support. And as usual, I will explain the game as I go. And I think we are pretty much good to go. Again, I did all the setup in respect removing cards, staging the battlegrounds decks and the path decks here respectively. I have given each of the players the 7 card. I'm playing with, I think there is a mode which is called, I think, less challenging mode or so, what is called. Yeah, it's a difficulty mode here, so it's standard or challenging. I'm going with a standard easier mode, which yeah, basically means we are drawing 1 fewer card for the bot player, that is. There's one last thing left to do, that's removing 2 cards each. So each of the players will start the game with 7 cards in their hands, and I have to cycle down to 2. Cycling means they're not really out of the game, they're coming into a discard pile, but from that discard pile those cards could come back. And that's especially true for the AI player, because he's really running through his deck like crazy. That's at least how I found it. For the bot player, we are simply doing this randomly. So I'm removing this card and I'm removing this card. They come face down into the cycle pile. And I also don't know what the cards are that he currently holds in his hand. We will find those out, or this out, rather sooner than later. For us, on the other hand, we really have to make some informed decision. So let's have a quick look at the cards in our hand. And the main, or the most important information right now at this point in time is this, or are these numbers here. This tells us on which path we can play this particular card. So Boromir can either go to a battleground of the Dunedain, so basically that's on the Dunedain battleground, that is, or where Dunedain armies and leaders are allowed. So this could come up rather sooner, or we can send him to a path 3 to 6. We will start with path 1, then we will do path 2. And in this scenario, we will end the game after we have resolved path 6. That is, then the game basically ends at the end of that round, and we tally up our score. And which side has the most amount of victory points will win. And I think in ties, it's always the shadow player. So, with that information, we have to cycle down. I'm relatively certain I will cycle Velia, Ring of the Air, because it's an item that belongs to Elrond. Right now, we don't have Elrond in our hand, so I think that's right now maybe the least useful card. So we are simply cycling this. It could come back, depending a little bit on how much cards we draw and whatnot. And then we need another card, and right now I'm still tempted to cycle Boromir, because yeah, he could theoretically give us some fighting power when we are fighting a battleground where he is allowed. And the first battleground I think he will be allowed actually. The problem is we don't have a Dunedain army which would support him. So I think Boromir, okay, he also has this ability here. Yeah, we have to forsake a card, but we draw a card. No, I think Boromir has to go to the cycle pile. Again, he could come back, so don't mourn too soon, and the rest of these cards will go into our hands, and then we can basically start the game. In this scenario, the Balrog is the starting player. I think in all the other scenarios, the Free Peoples will go first. That's different here. And the first thing that we are doing is to activate a battleground. We know what this first battleground is because it's staged. Normally this is done randomly, and here we have Minas Morgul, which we have to play. Let's put it in the middle of the table, and it comes with an activation power here, which is quite a nasty one. So the Mordor player draws up to 5 cards, one at a time. Play the first Nazgul character drawn to reserve, that's important, and then stop, cycle the unplayed cards. It's worth 2 victory points. It's a shadow battleground, which means if we are not actively taking this one over, it will score for the shadow player 2 points, but we have to come up with basically 3 swords, or at least 1 more. Then there will be shields at the end of this round when we are resolving this battleground here. And these icons down here tell us which armies and or characters we can send to the battleground. So in this case, you see it's Dunedain, so we could send Strider and Boromir as well to this battleground if we so desire. Let's do the activation here first before we activate the path. We will draw the top 5 cards. That's a cave troll. We are ignoring this. It's not out of the game. It's cycled. And I think, yeah, this is a Nazgul, the commander. And as the battleground tells us, we have to play it into the reserve. It's a Nazgul, and yeah, it comes with a power and action. If in reserve, use an action, cycle this card, and each shadow player draws 1 card. Yeah, why not? But for now, this Nazgul needs to go to the reserve. This cave troll is simply being cycled, going into the cycle pile. And then we have to activate one of the tier 1 paths here. So I will roll a 4-sided die. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's this one here, and it's Gildor's Encampment. I think this is a good one, actually. This is simply out of the game. And a path is something the shadow players have to always actively, let's call it, attack in order to gain some victory points. The victory points printed here is only true for us if we as the Free Peoples will be able to successfully defend it, and it will score us 1 point. For the shadow players, it could be more than 1 point, because it's always some kind of a difference between the number of skulls they're playing versus our defenses. But I will come to that. Here it says path 1. This kind of correlates with the number on these cards here, which means Sam Gamgee, we can move to any path 1 to 9. In this scenario, we only play until path 6. The full trilogy is always 9 paths. So which means, again, only characters which can go here on path 1 are allowed to be played here. I mean, makes sense, right? It also comes with an activation effect, which we're triggering right now. The elf player, which are we, because there's only 1 player here, draws 1 card and then cycles 1 card from hand. That's not bad. So let's see what we get. Oh, it's Gandalf the Grey. He is very powerful. And I think instead of, we will cycle Strider for that, I guess. Yeah, we have the perfect weapon here. Yeah, Strider goes into the cycle pile, and we will take Gandalf the Grey into our hand. Nice. And then we are basically good to start our actions. For the AI player, we have a handy dandy flowchart here. First of all, they would try to use an action, usefully resolve an action. Then he would try to pass, which doesn't really happen too often. That's at least how I think there are only very few instances where the shadow player is actively passing before we do that. Then they're trying to move something, and if everything else fails, they will play a random card from the hand. As we already know, the Balrog has a card in its reserve, and it also comes with an action, and this action allows us to cycle this card, and each shadow player draws 1 card. It has to be a useful action, but useful is also relatively straightforwardly defined here in the rules. It's always useful to draw cards, and that's exactly what we are doing. So we are cycling the commander. It's not out of the game, could and will come back most likely, but this will add 1 card to his current hand, which brings him to 6 cards. And this also means we have now fewer cards than the AI player, which would allow us to pass. And that's actually something we may want to consider, unless I'm seriously considering taking over Minas Morgul. And we could in theory do that by playing Gandalf the Grey together, for example, with Glamdring, which would give us 3 attack versus 2 defenses, which would be enough. But with 6 cards in his hand, I'm relatively certain, yeah, I think he will definitely try to defend that. And all the other cards we have, like Sam Gamgee and Frodo, we cannot send them to Battlegrounds because they don't have the icons up here. Only some characters can be sent to Battleground. So it's not very likely that we will be able to win this Battleground. And that would be quite a considerable price, actually, because you always lose the attackers. No matter if you are successful or not, you have to forsake the cards that you have used for the attack. So I think because our hand only consists of 5 cards, we are allowed to pass because the number of cards in your hand is less than each opponent. We only have 1 opponent, we have 5, they have 6, so we are allowed to pass. And we can also always pass if our hand size is equal to or less our carryover limit, which is usually 2, but that's not happening. But it's an or, one of these conditions does suffice. So I think in this case, let's pass. Back to the shadow player, back to the flowchart here, and I will not constantly show this to you. This is only true for the first 2, 3, 4 actions or so, just to give you an understanding. So we can't no longer use an action. We still cannot pass. We don't have anything to move, which means we are playing a random card from our hand. And again, I don't know the hand. I will roll a 6-sided die. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the 1. That's my J-Play die, by the way. My logo is the 1 because I'm usually rolling usually low. So we are playing the topmost card, which is an item, which I guess we can't play actually, because items always have to go to a wielder. This card can only play to a wielder on a path. There aren't any wielders on a path, which means it is unplayable. Eliminate this card, so this is now really out of the game. And then choose, forsake 1 card to add 1 corruption, or draw 2 cards. And in this case, choose means we as the player get to choose. And we really need to think about this for a second, because adding 1 corruption is an instant victory point, basically. So that's not great. Drawing 2 cards could be also some victory points, actually. And because, on the other hand, no, I think then he will go strong, very strong into the second round. So in this case, it might be really short-sighted. I will go for the forsake 1 card to add 1 corruption option here. Forsake or forsaking a card for the bot player is not as dramatic as it is for me, because they usually always cycle a card. They would start to cycle the rightmost card from the reserve. There aren't any cards there. We would then cycle a random card from hand, and this is really the worst thing. If the card hand would be empty, then they would really eliminate the top card of their draw deck. In this case, we will go for the random card from hand, and again, it's only cycled, so that's not something. I will still go for a 6-sided die. We will roll on a 6, simple as that. So 1, 2, 3. So this card is cycled. We don't get to look at it. We are only allowed to basically check out their forsaken pile, never the cycle pile, never the hand, never the draw pile, obviously. But that's, I guess, already the end of their turn. So it's back to us, and we can no longer pass because we have now more cards than the eye player, and we are not at our or under our carryover limit. And each game I have played, again, this is just my 3rd game against the bot, is playing out completely differently. It's really astounding how much replayability you simply get. It's always the same set of cards I was using because I was always playing this scenario here. It's also always the first battleground that you encounter, but still it feels so different each time you play this game. It's really unbelievable. So we have to do something now. So we can also start playing cards. We can move cards. We don't have anything in our reserve. We can cycle a card, which is kind of a pass, but you're still losing a card. We know this is pretty bad, eliminating 2 cards from hand to draw 1 card. This only really makes sense if you have 2 completely useless cards in your hand and you have to do something, then you do that. We can use an action. No, that's not the case, and we are not using any ring tokens. So I think it's either cycling a card or playing a card. In this case, we really may want to play a card. And I'm tempted to play Sam Gamgee actually into the reserve. Yeah, let's do that. So the card goes into our reserve area. In order to pay for a card you have to discard another card from your hand. And I think in this case, I may want to cycle, not discard, cycle the elf eye, because we don't have any elven cards in our hand. It's really a cool item actually, but right now we don't need it, so we are cycling this. And this was paying for this card. And Sam Gamgee allows us, when he is in the reserve, which he is right now, as an action to cycle this card along with any wielded items. So we can hold on to this, and this would add 1 shield to the active path, making it stronger, which is something I really quite like actually. Nice. Okay, that wasn't terrible. Back to the bot player. Can't pass, can't move, can't play an action, so we are playing a card. 1, 2, 4, and that's just a 4, so we are playing the bottom card here. What is it? It's an event, Nazgul's Mantle. Choose, again, we get to choose. Take 1 random Nazgul from the eliminated pile. We don't have one, so we can't go for this option here. And play it or draw 2 cards. So in this case, we don't really have a choice. We have to draw 2 cards. So we can't choose an option which is basically not changing the game state. So that's kind of a bummer. I was really hoping for something better. Now he's back at 5 cards, which is quite terrible. But I think all the more reason for me to pass, because now we have 3 cards versus 5 cards, and we want to see what they're doing, right? Because again, I don't think we are equipped to take over Minas Morgul, even though it would be 2 victory points, which is nothing to sneeze at in this game. So back to the bot, I will roll a 6-sided die. They have to play a card. That's 1, so the topmost card is being played. And okay, the Witch King himself. He can go to path 1 to 3 or 5 to 9. I don't really know what's happening at path 4 thematically. I mean, I read the books, I think at least twice. I watched the movies countless times, even the animated one from, I don't know, 30 years ago or even longer than that. But yeah. It's a Nazgul, obviously, and while in reserve, draw 1 additional card to each draw check. But I think he's not playing this into the reserve because we are looking here. The second priority, because it's not an item, obviously, who says to play to a path if the shadow player could conceivably win but is currently losing. That's exactly what's happening here. So right now he's losing that path, and with these 2 skull symbols he would conceivably win. He's not taking into the account that I have Sam Gamgee out in front of me. He's only really looking at his hand of cards, or not, the card that he played and the cards that he has in reserve. In this case, he can conceivably win, which means 2 versus 1. So he's immediately playing the Witch King here onto Gildos encampment, which is kind of, let's say, a good thing, because ultimately every attacker on a path will also be removed from the game, eliminated. So this is a very, very powerful card, and losing this to only quote-unquote 1 victory point could be quite alright, actually. So now it's back to us. We could still pass because we have 3 cards versus the 4 cards of the shadow player. But in this case, we may want to force his hand. So I'm really thinking about using the action on Sam Gamgee, because right now he is in our reserve. We can cycle this card to add 1 shield to the active path. So basically forcing the hand of the shadow player is usually not a bad thing. So let's do that. So he's not out of the game, simply cycled, and again this allows us to add 1 more shield onto the path. So right now it's 2 versus 2, which means we are winning this path. There's, I think, 1 scenario in the book where you have to have more defenses than attack points in order to win, so a tie is not enough, but I think that's not true for the Fellowship scenario here. So whenever he's now playing more characters, he will definitely play it here. Again, for us, making sure he might be then sacrificing to some extent more powerful cards in there. Back to the bot. We are rolling a die. It's the 3rd card here. Let's see what this is. And that's an army. Goblins of the Misty Mountains. And the artwork is top-notch. I really love it a lot. Very thematic, so nicely done. Really love it. But that's also the case for the War of the Ring, the Big Brother, big war game, basically. So, it's also a card. It's an army. Armies never go to paths, actually, unless there is something on the card which says so. But in this case, it's not the thing. He could, in theory, play it onto a battleground. No, it's a monster army or monstrous army, but Minas Morgul can only be defended by Mordor armies, which in this case means we have to play those fellas into the reserve. They will come back sooner or later for sure, and their ability simply says if this card is eliminated for any reason, cycle it instead. So they will keep coming back. I mean, we know those pesky little goblins here. But that's their action. We can't pass, unfortunately, now. So we can consider to play a card, another card into the reserve. Yeah, Frodo also keeps coming back. It's basically the same. When he is eliminated, he will always come back, so he's cycled. Instead, Gandalf is a very powerful character, but it's very early. He can go onto any path right now. I don't know. I don't want to play. I mean, we have a cool combination here between Gandalf the Grey and Glamdring. Because we have them both, I think we are playing Gandalf now. Into the reserve for now. We could play to the path. I think I want to hold on to that, right? On the other hand, if we're extremely lucky, we could win that path, right? So let's do that. So we are playing Gandalf the Grey directly onto the path. In order to do so, we are cycling Frodo Baggins. I don't know if that's a good idea or not, but his ability test tells me when we are taking our action next, if he is on a path, you may use your action to activate a path of the next higher number, which means we are automatically resolving combat on this path because there can only ever be one active path. There can be, in theory, an unlimited amount of battlegrounds active, but that's not the case for a path. So if we are now somewhat extremely lucky, this could go our way actually, but usually yeah, you know how, well or bad I'm rolling, right? So let's roll for the AI player. I think in this case we're rolling a 6-sider, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because again we are not doing anything with the goblins. So let's see, that's 5, so it's the last card in the deck. And I think we are lucky. I think we are really lucky, at least in respect to the path. We will lose the Minas Morgul, that much is clear. It's a Mordor army, obviously. It's Mordor orcs. It's also same as the goblins. They will keep coming back. We are not playing this to a battleground. It's an army. We can't play it to a path, obviously. I think this is pretty strong, actually. I think this is amazing. For the next battleground, I'm a bit worried, but for now, we have to play those Mordor orcs into the reserve, and they always go to the right of any active cards there, because what the AI player is choosing, it's basically a concept first in, last out. So whatever happens, whatever he has to sacrifice a card, will always do that to the rightmost card in the reserve here, for example. If he has to activate something, it will always go from right to left. Nice. Over to me. We could pass, but we are not, because we can win our very first path here without losing the character. So we are now using Gandalf's ability. If on a path, he is on a path, you may use your action to activate a path of the next higher number. So we have 2 2s. Again, we are rolling a die. So let's roll for the 4-sider. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are activating this path, the Inn of the Prancing Pony. This is a bad one. So this card is out. I can't show this to you, but I'm not. So you can figure this out on your own. But before we are actually doing this, I think before we do this, we have to do that. Let me quickly confirm that actually. Yes, indeed. However, before the new path activation text of combat is immediately resolved. So let's do that. So we are comparing skulls against shields. The first thing that they have to break through is are the defenses of the card, which really means tokens that we have played and shields that are printed on this. If there would be an overflow, let's say there would be 3 skulls on it, then we would have to start eliminating our characters in order. We have to do that. There is no choice. But in this case, 2 is already enough to block the Witch King, which means the Witch King is dead, and we have won that combat. And any leftover characters are also cycled into our cycle pile. That was huge, nicely done, and we have just scored our very first victory point. The problem is, now we are activating the Inn of the Prancing Pony. And keep in mind, we are ending the game once we have resolved path number 6. So this can, I think, happen. I think 4 rounds is the minimum that we have to play, as far as I remember. But because we already have resolved 1, or we will be resolving 2 paths in the very first round, we already know for a fact that the game will only last 5 rounds, maybe only 4. So in this case, we are activating it. Each shadow player draws 2 cards. It's only one shadow player in this instance. There is a scenario where I would simply duplicate that. In this case, that's not gonna happen. And maybe it was a stupid idea, actually. I really should have known that the second path is worth 2 victory points, actually. Maybe this was stupid. Maybe this was really stupid. So we're adding 4 more cards. I will quickly shuffle those, even though we are rolling the die. I still want randomness like crazy in this case. And that's basically also our action, actually. So I think, yeah, he will now score 2 victory points instead of 1. But we have, maybe it's still not too bad. Maybe it's still not too bad. Let's see about that. So we are rolling our die because there's nothing he can do right now with the cards in his reserve. They can't go to a path, no matter which path it is. So let's roll that die. So we are taking the first card, and it's Isengard character Ugluk. He can only go to path 5 or 6 and move this card to path 6 even if the shadow player is winning. Path 6 is the last path in this scenario anyway, and the last path he will go out there like crazy, and if he's on a path then we can activate a different, well, basically he will exchange the path if that is. I think if it's useful, I think so, can't quite remember. So for now, this has to go to the reserve as well. We are down to 1 card and we only have an item which we can't play right now, so we are simply passing. So let's keep going. No, they're rolling a 6-sider now. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's the second card in here. Okay, that's still okay, I guess. It's another Nazgul. He can go to path 2. Keep in mind, we are now at path 2. We're on path 2, so we can legally play him there. The thing is, right now, he cannot conceivably win that path with this 1 character because it's 1 skull versus 1 shield. This will change or can change, and until that's the case, he will then instead play this character to the reserve. So let's quickly do that. So it goes up here. And again, conceivably really means the card that we have played plus any cards they have in their reserve, which would help them. But he has an action in the reserve. Uses an action cycle this card, and each Free People's player must forsake a card. Yeah, that is terrible. And having us forsaking a card is always bad. We are still passing, I believe, which means he is now cycling the Reaver here. Nazgul, so each Free People's player must forsake 1 card. And forsake means choose a card to eliminate either from your hand, your reserve, or the top of your draw deck. I think because we have now cycled Gandalf, we may no longer need Galamdring. And I think I want rather a card which I know is not useful at this point in time, rather than really something very fancy that might be coming up with our next card draw. So I think I am going to forsake or eliminate my first card, which is Galamdring. Very powerful weapon indeed. Okay then, now the shadow player is theory at his carryover limit of 2. So maybe let's have a quick look at the flowchart here. Can the bot pass? Yes, indeed. Now we're checking this. Is any other player or bot, so basically only us in this case, above the carryover limit? Above. We are not above the carryover, which means no, we are keep going, like moving and playing cards. In this case, we have to continue playing cards. When I read this first, I found it quite odd, actually, and I believe Colin from One Stop Co-op Shop also asked the very same question on The Geek. Actually, I found that quite funny. But yeah, that's how it is. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first card we are playing, it's a Hill Droll, which he will also play into his reserve. And oh, maybe I should have mentioned that. You might have noticed we always have to cycle a card in order to play a card. That's not true for the bot player, obviously. You have seen that. They simply play the card no matter what. They're not playing this card to the battleground, because, yeah, it's not legal to play, so they don't want to have any monsters at Minas Morgul, it seems. So the last thing to do, the last action, is to draw this card here. And it's an item for Saruman's staff, which is unplayable because we don't have Saruman out. Eliminate this card and choose. So we can take Saruman from the draw deck or cycle pile into a hand, or add 1 corruption. And I think in this case we want to add a corruption, I believe. And I think I forgot that actually. They should have one corruption already, right? When we have, there was one card which we have, sorry, Forsaken, right? Yeah, this one here, I decided to go for the corruption. So they already had one victory point basically next to that. So I would put here. I think in this case we will do the same, because Saruman could make things much more difficult actually. Yeah, I don't want Saruman out right now. So we are doing this. We are adding one corruption, which is a victory point for them. But I think we will score 2 points for the path now, which is pretty good. So this card is then also eliminated. And that's now the end of the round, because the bot is out of cards. And unfortunately, this is really a broken flowchart, because they are missing the exit routine. Actually, because they would always go this, and at that point in time they wouldn't be able to move, they wouldn't be able to play. I think there's basically one line missing here: no more cards in hand, pass. That's basically what they miss. I was really wondering if I should feed this into ChatGPT or something like that and see if they understand this flowchart. Actually, it would be quite funny. But yeah, we will end the round, which means we are resolving the battlegrounds and the paths. So we will start with the battleground here, Minas Morgul. We haven't even tried to attempt to take it over, which means they will simply win that. That's 2 victory points for them. So they're at 4 already, plus the 2 plus the 2 corruption they have. But it's the same here for the Inn of the Prancing Pony. We have successfully defended, even though no one is there. I mean, all the streets are deserted, it seems. But we will collect the 2 victory points here. So we are at 3. They are at 4, which isn't terrible, quite honestly. And then basically the last thing that we do, or one of the last things, so we are moving the starting player marker over to us, and at each of the sides will now draw 3 cards. Again, we are playing on the, let's call it, easy mode, which means the shadow player will also only quote-unquote 3 cards. Normally in a normal multiplayer game, or if you would be playing on the challenging mode, they would be drawing 4 cards. So let's see what we get. Sting. Oh, quite nice. Oh no. Oh, this could be bad. No! Oh, that is so unfortunate. I mean, these are 3 very powerful items. The problem really is we can't play them right now. We always have to attach them to a wielder, to a character. Are you kidding me? Okay, this is so terrible. But let's activate our battleground. This is Rivendell, by the way. I happen to remember. So this is a Free People's Battleground. So we have to actively, or not active, we have to defend it in order to score those points. But it already comes with 2 shields. A good thing really about this one is the elf player draws 1 card and then cycles 1 card from hand. So this could be crucial. And no, it's not. Are you kidding me? This is so bad, so terrible. I think it doesn't really matter actually. I know we have, I think, because we haven't seen Gimli yet, we will instead get rid of Sting. It's already, we are cycling it. Because I think both Sam and Frodo are in our cycle pile. And again, Gimli could come up rather sooner than later for all I know. Okay, that was quite bad. So will be a short round for us. We will be activating one of those 2 paths. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4. This one down here. It's Imladris. Okay, that was so important. The elf player draws 2 cards. Oh, come on. No items anymore. We want characters and armies. Come on. Fingers crossed. And it's Gimli. Woohoo! Okay, that is quite powerful. He can go to the path even. That's nice. And another card. And oh, Galadriel. Yeah, the Mirror of Galadriel. So we will definitely use one of those to bring Gimli into the game. Okay, that is quite nice actually. Cool stuff. And then we would be starting the next round of the game. But I think for today, I will end my playthrough. Of course, now I have to assess the cards that we have out here, because I know he will try to take over Rivendell and or maybe the path. Yeah, at least the Hill Troll can go to Rivendell. And yeah, the goblins can also go there together, even though he would not be able to defeat Rivendell because they only have 2 attack icons here. So right now he cannot conceivably win. The problem is, yeah, we can't send Gimli to defend Rivendell. I mean, makes perfect sense thematically, right? But yeah, let's see about that. But yeah, for today, I will end my playthrough mainly for you, giving you some room to find and spot and make me aware of any goofs I may have made. So let me know if I did something terribly wrong, but I think I got it figured out, at least I hope. Also let me know what you think I should be doing next. Really looking forward to any advice from you guys. I hope you're enjoying my little playthrough of War of the Ring, the card game here, with the, I keep forgetting, Against the Shadow expansion, which really adds a lot to the game. And yeah, it's a fun exercise, a fun experience to play. I really enjoy this a big deal. It's a very nice puzzler. It feels very thematic. Artwork is lovely, absolutely gorgeous. So yeah, let me know what you think. And yeah, with that being said, hope to see you soon in one of my other videos. And until then, bye bye.